ground, raising a little bit of money to really run off the smell of an oily rag and make something where VCs look at you and go, I see where this is going. So you can see something, and that's really so hard to do. It's easy to say, and
oh yeah,
and it's really one of the hardest parts of being an entrepreneur is that initial kick, especially if you don't know any VCs and you have to get intros and go golfing to try to meet someone that knows someone that knows someone. It's a nightmare. But that's always on your the first venture, and I think once you've nailed that, it's really difficult. But once you start making contacts, and it gets harder in other ways because your business obviously grows, but it gets easier to do that initial stuff. And so well done. It's really exciting time, and I really hope to see. I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys do with the funds and grow and expand the journalist team. And are you guys looking into doing video stuff as well, or because it's data driven, it's more based on type?
Yeah. So just to be clear, the news or content end is going to end up being a smaller and it'll be still dominant to an extent, but really it's going to be a smaller and smaller part of what we actually do.
Didn't you have some videos from PopChest on your thing?
Well,
I think the protocol put a couple videos up on there, right?
If it's appropriate for me to mention it, we've just signed a memorandum of understanding with Valerian to syndicate his videos through Brave New Coin. He's got by far the best production quality out there in terms of video content for this space, and there's no point for us reinventing the wheel or setting up a video component to a studio, if you will. So yeah, we definitely plan to do that, or to plan to syndicate quality video feeds. So I'm not sure where Valerian's just disappeared to, but it's
we're giving him a plug.
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought I'd maybe take the opportunity to tell you guys what we're really doing, what the exciting network effect stuff is that we've been planning for so long.
Bring it on.
Okay,
we love exciting stuff here.
Shameless self-promotion. Right, yeah, so I imagine a world where basically anything that is tradable, transferable, is going to be on some form of blockchain. I think that's sort of inevitable, just from the efficiency gains from doing so. So it could be your house, your car, it could be some form of derivative product, it doesn't really matter.
Blockchain all the things.
Yeah, blockchain all the things. Let's be clear, some things definitely do not need a blockchain on them, and I'm seeing millions of dollars go towards things that are literally no better than a database. But there's some incredibly good use cases out there.
Yeah, now let's talk about that, because I think that's an interesting point. We're hearing all this talk about private blockchains and stuff like that. I mean, when I think private blockchain, I think just, that's called a database with multiple key entry, or, multi-key sort of technology.
Permissions.
I mean, it's much faster, it's quicker, we understand it, the permissions are understood. Why would someone want a blockchain which is private that, obviously because it's going to be small in terms of who's controlling this blockchain, it can also be 51%ed or some sort of way of attacking these things.
Josh, I think you kind of answered your own question, which is because it's small, right? So let's assume there are a consortium of international banks, right? So maybe it's 20 banks that you're starting to see form, and that's the whole point. They don't really want anyone else to be involved with it, but they can reasonably trust each other. So as long as whoever's operating the nodes between them, they can say, okay, let's take this big pile of money from bank in South Africa, let's move it to bank in Singapore, and they can expect that it's going to settle within minutes as opposed to the however many days and other steps in between. So for their specific use case, it seems reasonable to be able to do the things that they need, but without the risk of having all of these random Bitcoin people around the world with their blind nodes being involved with the process.
I mean, currently how it works is that a bank doesn't trust some bank or doesn't have an agreement with a bank in Bangladesh, and so it's this 6 degrees of separation system. So that bank in New York might have a bank in California that has a bank in London who has a bank affiliation with this bank in Bangladesh, and so the money hops over all these 4 points. The reason being is because, well, we don't know, is the bank in Bangladesh going to go broke? Is it how liquid is it? So it sort of jumps over these points. This private blockchain, you're still sort of keeping, you still have the hard thing about really researching these banks to let them into this blockchain, this private blockchain, and so again you'll have your small network. It might make it a little bit smaller, but I feel like there's still going to be this trust issue.
What you're describing is just an onboarding process. So there might be some clear rules in terms of having a participant join the consortium, if you will, on a private blockchain. But that is a lot easier than maintaining rating agency and all the ancillary services for Bank A to do their research, as you say, on a bank to settle or trade with or use as an intermediary. I mean, the legacy system is so utterly inefficient that we've completely failed the World Bank targets of reducing down remittance to 5%. It's still sitting at about 10% as an average. It's just so many middlemen are involved. What private blockchains effectively allow you to do is go to groups that don't really trust each other, but kind of do. Like the SWIFT network. I mean, they've come together to create a system, and that system is done in the, I suppose, traditional sense of everybody's got a rating, and everybody's investigated, and everybody's under different compliance and regulation. And
so why not use the SWIFT network?
Well, the SWIFT network works right now, but it would be more efficient to have a blockchain solution that is just simply not going to require trust. It's not going to require some of the regulation, and especially the rating agency, and as I said, the vast majority of ancillary services to actually make the SWIFT network work.
But at the end of the day, you're still, on a private blockchain, you're still settling, I'm guessing, fiat currency, which you have these, and that's the great thing about Bitcoin. It reminds me of when Skype, well, before Skype, as voice over IP was first coming out, originally you'd ring up Germany from Australia, and you hello, 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 and it would cost an arm and a leg for every minute.
Yep.
Why is that? Because telephone companies were actually connecting to other telephone companies, which were connecting to other telephone companies, which had an agreement with the final destination telephone, much like the banking system currently. And your phone call would actually travel through, this mess of companies, and everyone would take a little bit of a piece of the pie, and that's why it would cost an arm and a leg. Then some smart aleck thought, well, I might just make a local phone call, convert it to voice IP, send it over the internet to Germany, make another local phone call, so effectively making 2 local calls, which are untimed, and so you pay whatever that is, and all of a sudden it became cheaper. The whole industry got disrupted. Grandma didn't know she was using voice over IP. She just dialed a number and it worked the same. But all of a sudden the prices dropped. There was a massive, and I think, that's the great thing about something like Bitcoin is, the dirty word Bitcoin, but actually what you're doing is you're allowing someone locally to buy Bitcoin, transfer that in a trustless manner to another around the world who doesn't need to have any agreement. They just receive the Bitcoin and instantly sell it to market. So this notion to private blockchains and banks trying to build another system, because Bitcoin's too, having to trust the thousands of nodes, I don't buy it.
Valerian?
Let's say if there's what the standard settlement between transfers is like 3 days right now, so T+3 between, let's say, a trade and actual settlement. And think of all the economic activity that's happened, the acceleration of money that's happened within 3 days of settlement. Okay, now you change that 3 days to 15 minutes. All right, so just the multiplier of the possibilities of transactions just becomes exponential, right? So that's how many billions of dollars, trillions, just in time savings alone. Okay, so now think of in that 3 days, how many companies, how many agencies, how many entities had some sort of participation across countries, across companies, across industries. Okay, now that 3 days is 15 minutes, how many of them have anything to do? Okay, so that's a whole nother set of freed up capital. So even in those two small, just kind of immediate use cases, you can start to see just the billions of dollars that just comes with making things a little bit, doing what you're doing right now, but just doing it a heck of a lot faster and without as many bodies in between.
Well, if we take a step back and sort of think about the narrative of how the industry is evolving on a grand scale, it's highly comparable to the rise of the internet, right? So you had Oracle wanted their own internet, Microsoft wanted their own internet, TCP/IP came along and just wiped everything else out in terms of just made all of the existing proposals redundant.
Yeah, and you still had people saying, "Oh, TCP/IP could never do video," and "Oh, how are we going to? The whole internet's going to crash in 1996." But really, at the end of now, we're all streaming 4K videos and doing amazing HD video conferencing across the same protocol, which has evolved over that time. And I think Bitcoin's going to do the same thing.
Yeah, that could be the case for Bitcoin, but we will, for the intermediary, for the first 5 to 7 years, absolutely experience a rise of multiple blockchains.
Oh, I have no doubt. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And one thing I keep harping on about in my writings and discussions with various people in the industry is that networks always end up wanting to talk to each other. Right, so you might have a private blockchain for the Swift network, or you might have a private blockchain-based solution for Link, that Nasdaq's trading platform. You might have a separate protocol for Ripple, and R37 is doing something, and but ultimately assets, titles, information, transactions are going to want to be able to touch and mingle and interact with each other across these different chains. So I think the first trillion-dollar companies are going to be those that are able to offer a seamless middleware solution.
So I know
the AOL and CompuServification of Bitcoin right now.
Yeah.
So,
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that you know, I mean, I got into Bitcoin because of the notion of this freedom of permissionless freedom of people being able to financially transact with the rest of the world without permission, without begging. You know, as a Bitcoin business and other entrepreneurs that have tried to start Bitcoin businesses, we have banks actually blocking you to do something that's a real basic human right, and that's to trade. The base right to trade is so fundamental to human nature and humans' nature will to survive, that having these centralized organizations say, no, we're not going to give you an account, no, we're not going to give you an account, is so despicable. And I kind of know now how it feels to be living in a developing world where they're not even there to say no, they're just not there. And so you don't have any opportunities at all. And where Bitcoin comes in is all of a sudden you just drop a cell phone tower in place. People all over the world are, without permission, working on WAP solutions for the old legacy phones that plug into the Bitcoin blockchain. So, you know, the exciting thing for me is this permissionless money protocol. And you know, if the banks want to jump on and use this blockchain technology behind Bitcoin for their own means, that's fun. But I mean, that's fine. But I just don't find it that exciting to go, wow, ooh, great, the banks have got a gonna save some money. You know, really don't really care.
Well, to me, that's the exciting part of it, right? Which is you have the open part of money where people in Kenya are using the same protocol as people on Wall Street, right? So how they use it, to me, that's irrelevant, right? So as long as that open element remains, that's the exciting part, is that you're going to see people in different parts of the world use it completely differently that may or may not have anything ever to do with them, but to have that sort of freedom and opportunity, that's the exciting part to me.
Absolutely.
I'll add to that if I can. So you're talking about financial inclusion more than anything. So last week, all New Zealand banks shut down all New Zealand Bitcoin operators' bank accounts.
Oh,
So
good on them. Thank God they've stopped the evilness of the future.
Well, if you want a bit of insight into why they did that, it's kind of convoluted because the same banks are doing all sorts of experiments with the likes of Ripple and other networks in Australia. Most New Zealand banks are owned by Australian banks, and those same banks that shut down accounts here in New Zealand are, just going full steam ahead with experiments over in Oz. And the reason they're shutting things down in New Zealand is because we don't have any regulation. So what the banks have turned around and said is, we don't know. We just simply don't know, and therefore you tick this particular box in our risk. So instead of having a known unknown on our books, we just simply delete that known unknown off our books. And that's well,
the thing is, it's all a bit.
Describe that right now because I'm not happy about it, obviously. But bringing it back to what Valerian's doing, I think there's a couple of factors in there. Bitcoin is an alternative to the existing money system in the sense that you can simply choose to participate, and it yields great promise for financial inclusion, absolutely. But I think for people to actually use it as a currency, it's going to need a lot more infrastructure. One example is, the kids in Kenya or poor families in Afghanistan or whatever that are wanting to have financial inclusion by using some form of blockchain technology. They'll uptake solutions that they won't even know they're using Bitcoin, right? So I keep saying Bitcoin is the first app that came with the invention of the blockchain, and what we're going to see is that your grandma will start using Bitcoin to some extent, but she will have absolutely no clue that she is using Bitcoin. It will just be wrapped in a graphical user interface to the extent where it comes with a service. So if you want to send money from country A to B, you just press next, send, or whatever, and you have no idea that you're actually using it. So this is what Valerian's talking about with completely different ways of using the same network, and that's the exciting part. So that you can have packaged up, applications that do particular services and expand what those services are over time. And there's some great entrepreneurial companies out there. And then you've got people that know how to use Bitcoin properly in a peer-to-peer environment for financial inclusion, for financial liberty, and all the rest. So it's great to see that the whole spectrum is evolving. But
I think going back to your point about the banks using the excuse of no regulations, I mean, there's plenty of regulations and understanding about barter and the concept of barter. And at the end of the day, you're bartering. It's just like saying, I'll give you a whiskey for this, except I'll give you this entry in the blockchain for this. And the banks are really stalling because they know that this is coming for them. They know that people don't, I mean, why are we paying so much money for basically a database entry that says Josh has this much in his account and we're going to store it for him? And it's all based on fractional reserve and nonsense. There's so much silliness behind the old system. I think it's, for early adopters, especially of Bitcoin, that really understood the agorist side of what this means, what this blockchain means, is it's super important to keep that part alive and understand that banks are, I feel, using the excuse of we don't know the regulation to basically shut competition down.
Absolutely, and welcome to capitalism, right? which is to say that's exactly what you expect them to do. But I don't really see that. Although obviously I'm not in New Zealand, so I'm not directly affected by it. But I tend to look at things like that as an opportunity, just as much as they are a threat, right? So it's if you truly believe in the openness of the system, then you have to allow that people are going to use it in a way that you don't particularly care for, right? So in this case, it's basically the bank shutting off particular kinds of companies, Bitcoin, blockchain companies, from participating in the legacy system. But at the same time, if you really believe in this technology, then you have to figure out a way to not need the legacy system in the first place, right? So if that's where you ultimately want to go, then it's not gonna. They're not gonna make it easy for you. That sure as heck, right?
Yeah, absolutely, I agree.
Well, I think what I just described about New Zealand is not isolated to just one country. We're seeing this in quite a few countries with banks doing similar things, and I would say that from the bankers that I've spoken to anyway, they don't see Bitcoin as a threat in terms of a replacement to the existing system. They're too arrogant to some extent to view Bitcoin as big enough to make any form of serious disruption.
I agree with that too.
At this point, the problem is that Bitcoin isn't a currency. Okay, it's four different things at the same time. It's a currency, it's a payment network, it's a store of value, and it's a piece of software all at the same time. And the reason that we're seeing the same banks in different countries and different banks all around the world doing different things that often look like they're sort of throwing around their imperialist weight is because they're classifying it as different categories. So in Australia, we've seen goods and services tax applied to Bitcoin, which is ludicrous. You're basically paying, what's the tax rate there, like 10% or 15% extra on top of your Bitcoin price because they're not viewing it as a currency, they're viewing it as a commodity. So, you know, the industry is very young, and it will take a while for all of this to be hammered out. But it's...
England did the same thing. They put a VAT on there and then took it off very quickly as they realized, oh, there's a massive brain drain going on, and we might have just killed the future of finance. And
Australia's federated state, so it's a little bit different for them to actually renege on their laws. They need to go through a lot more of an extensive process to, you know, make these changes.
Easy to go in, hard to go out. That's the way state loves it.
Yep. That's absolutely right.
So guys, maybe we can change gears, just because I hate talking about banking. I don't know how we just talked about it for 5 hours, but Valerian was unable to connect with us earlier. I did want to give him a chance to kind of talk about what he's doing with Pop Chest, because originally we had started out talking about you know, businesses in Bitcoin and how it is to try and do some fundraising and how it is to get started. Pop Chest started, I don't know, a few months back or something like that. Valerian, maybe you can give us a little bit of your story about how you kind of came up with that product and maybe some pieces of advice as you've developed it for people who are interested in getting into Bitcoin. You know, what were some of the things that you found that you maybe didn't expect? Was this your first rodeo, so to speak, with trying to have a Bitcoin or a regular business, I guess, not even just a Bitcoin business, like your own business?
Yeah, in terms of just being a tech startup, yeah, this is definitely my first go about. So to take it a few steps back, I live and work in Los Angeles in the entertainment industry, edit television shows, produce film and TV for years and years and years. And I got bit by the Bitcoin bug like a lot of people, and that was just one of those, like, okay, I've got to do something. And since I can't program, I can't code, I'm not an engineer, what I can do is tell a story and put together some pretty pictures, right? So I went to my local Bitcoin meetup, and the first time I made a video was a speech by Andreas Antonopoulos at the Los Angeles Bitcoin meetup. So put that up on YouTube. It got like 30,000 views or something ridiculous like that in a short amount of time for such a niche thing. I was like, okay, there's definitely an audience or an appetite for this kind of content produced Fantastic. In a way that people can consume it and understand it. So I was like, okay, let's continue doing more of that. And I got to the point where, you know, the number one question for every startup is, whose problem are you trying to solve? What's the problem that you're trying to solve? And the problem I was having was I was getting an audience for these videos, but the amount of revenue from just throwing it up on YouTube and getting ads for it isn't any, the balance is like just here, right? So this is how many views you get, this is how much money you make, and somehow Google is like a multi-billion-dollar company in between, yet the people actually making this stuff are kind of getting hosed. So it's like, well, I'm making Bitcoin videos, right? So isn't there a way to have somebody actually pay you a micropayment, a fraction of a dollar, however much it may be, to be able to pay me for my videos? It seemed like a relatively simple thing, and I looked around and looked around and looked around, didn't find anything like that, right? So that frustration is what started PopChest. So I ended up just finding a programmer on Bitcoin Talk, who's my partner now, James Poole. He did the first Bitcoin micropayment channel demonstration, which, without getting too far into the weeds, it's using part of the Bitcoin protocol to be able to make an infinite amount of small payments back and forth and settle all of that in one transaction on the Bitcoin blockchain. So it's a super efficient system. It's years before it actually works in practice, but seeing somebody who built that, I knew like that was a person who could build just the simple thing that we wanted to do, which is watch a preview, just like you would on iTunes, decide if you want to buy it, hold up your phone to the QR screen on the code, and watch whatever it is that you pay for. Simple pay-per-view system. So we put that into place for us, for our videos on the protocol.tv, and we just started getting people going, hey, that's really cool. Can we use it for this kind of video? Can we use it for our stuff here? So we kind of took the technology part of it, and that's what became the basis of PopChest. So we opened it up to other people to start using it during our beta period. Like you said, about 3 months ago, we've got close to 200 content creators using it in all sorts of different ways with different kinds of videos, and that's where we're at right now, just trying to optimize the system and make it better so that we can get the next 2,000 people to start using it.
So I have a few questions with that, right? Because people are always telling me, oh, you know, tipping is so great for artists, and I haven't really seen too many tips. So a couple things for people that don't know. If you have 1,000 views on YouTube, they'll give you $2. So you're definitely going to be going all out all night long after that money. I mean, it's nonsense, right? The issue that I would see is two things. Number one, people, how do you get people to pay, right? Because I can go to YouTube and I could watch something for free. Why would I want to pay? And then also getting people into Bitcoin in order to be making those payments, right? Because even I, as a Bitcoin user, was on protocol.tv the other day and I wanted to watch something, and then when it asked me for the QR code, it wasn't the 25 cents that it was asking for. It was just me having to log in, which might just be me being really lazy. I definitely think that that's a possibility. I think that there's, you know, there's kind of browser programs. I think CryptoKit has something where it's already like an extension.
Browser wallet plugins.
Yeah, right. So that would be, I guess, one way. Am I just a more lazy user, or have you run into this? Do you have any counters to that?
This is not something that's going to be fixed tomorrow, right? So if you take the long-term view, which as a startup I think you have to take, which is to say there's a series of problems. Some of them are specific to our business. Some of them are specific to the industry as a whole, right? So getting people to have Bitcoin, that's not just our problem, that's everyone's problem, right? So when you have Coinbase working on that, when you have Purse.io working on that, when you have Lawnmower working on that, collectively, that's a problem that's going to be solved over time. So I don't concern myself too much with that. It's either going to work or it's not going to work. People are either going to start using this as a currency or they're not. And whichever way that goes, we'll have to deal with it. But that's something that's a time issue, right? If we can be around long enough as a business, then that problem's going to be solved. The other one, which I think it's really at the core, I think, of a lot of what is happening, specifically as it relates to video. Some of it is our technical issues that we have to create, right? Which is how do you have the wallets and all of these things. But the other thing, really the bigger part, it's right here, right? Which is like changing people's behavior ever so slightly. And you can change it a lot, or you can change it a little. So we're taking the stance of, okay, let's try to change it a little. So Tatiana, you got a roadblock when you didn't want to whip out your Bitcoin wallet. Understandable, but you're not really doing anything different than if you were to go to iTunes, right? It's the same process, whether you whip out your credit card or whip out your phone, which are becoming one and the same as we go along, right? It's like you've got all your credit cards on your phone, so really there's not going to be that much a difference over time. It's just a question of...
That's a good point, and sorry to interrupt, but I really, I think that's where I feel a lot of, because I've seen a couple of businesses try to do video with tipping, and I think for me personally, the pain is pulling it out and going, what if I don't like it? Screw it, I'm going to pay for it, and then, this is boring, I've just paid $1 for it. Whereas I'd really love to, the Spotify side of it has really, in terms of their model of pay $9 and just eat all you can eat, and then distribute that across the artists that I view, is kind of a good. Of course, Spotify also pays sweet F all for the artist, but I think, I mean, for me personally, in terms of options, I think that would be nice. Also, a friend of mine here in Berlin, Meinard, he has Satoshi Pay. He's developed a really cool thing where as you scroll down, parts of a document starts revealing itself, and you pay for every single part of the document. So it's not, you don't pay for one-off payment for the document. So you can start reading, this is boring, and you've only paid a few little bits. It'd be nice on video as well to say, hey, I've only watched half of this.
This is the beautiful part about where micropayments start meeting micro-content, right? And I think, Valerian, you're going to do incredibly well. All you have to do is just be around, because what we'll inevitably end up seeing is, I mean, we all know the huge move to mobile payments. It's all the stats are showing that mobile payments are, it's just unstoppable. So imagine 5 years from now when you go to whatever website, Brave New Coin or National Business Review or Wall Street Journal or whatever, and you've got your bank account or whatever tied to your Bitcoin wallet. You don't even know that there'll be many services where you don't even know you're using some kind of Bitcoin-based service. It'll just deduct cents as you scroll through pages because you've agreed in the terms that you'll pay as you go for everything. So pay as you go, micro-content, micro-transactions, they're just completely reshaping content absorption. And it's all about finding that user experience balance where, as Valerian says, it's just changing things slightly, right?
I agree. It's an amazing space, and I think what you're building there is the killer app for Bitcoin, really. I mean, content and being able to A, monetize it on one side, but B, allow users to not get smashed with advertising or be tracked and traced for everything they do so that the perfect ad comes to them. I think it's a really beautiful mix. I agree.
I think a lot of people
don't they need to want to spend money? I mean, I don't want to spend money.
Well, I think a lot of people pay for convenience. Like, I would happily pay I would $10 a month, or say set some form of budget, and say, right, this group of websites, and you can add to them, and it might cost you, I don't know. This is the Spotify solution, for example. It'll just simply say, right, I'll spend up to this dollar amount across these websites, and I don't want any advertising. I think there will be solutions out there, perhaps people even licensing your technology, Valerian, to some extent, to build these things. But you just end up surfing the web and, you know, paying a small fee for the convenience of not having some Ajax commercial or Pfizer rat down your throat, right?
And that's the thing, though. It's great to hear. Actually, all three of you sort of mentioned different ways of wanting to consume, and ultimately that's where I see us going, which is to be able to have a technology that's flexible enough so that, Fran, when you come to the site and you want to pay that 25 cents, we're more than happy to take your money. But at the same time, Tatiana, if we could develop the intelligence to say, okay, this person probably doesn't want to be bothered, okay, you can watch an ad and still get to the same content, and for the content creator, we're still monetizing at the very least, at the minimum of what you're getting right now. At the very best, we're going above and beyond, because that 25 cents, Tatiana, as you were saying, when you get $2 per 1,000 views, when somebody gives you 25 cents, that's the equivalent, you know, to do the math, right? Which is, you know, that's right. Exactly. It's like we'll take 1 Fran for every 1,000 commercial views. So this is the beginning of that. So we're starting with the simplest thing. The next thing you're actually going to see us roll out with our site is to be able to have that choice between Bitcoin micropayments and watching something ad supported. So we want to capture the value however it comes, and ultimately it's about you as a viewer getting things how you want to get it, when you want to get it, in a way that is comfortable for you. That answer is going to be different for everyone. If Josh wants to pay a monthly fee, fine, we'll take his money. We can do that now that we have programmable money that allows you to take, you know, X, Y, Z amounts. If someone wants to pay as you go, Fran will take your money in a pay-per-view model. If someone doesn't want to pay but wants to give me their time and attention, Tatiana will serve you ad after ad and make sure that the content creator gets their content monetized. So there's not a silver bullet, and we're not starting thinking that there is, but we're starting with this one thing because I think that really maximizes what Bitcoin can do, which is something that credit cards just can't do. We can take 25 cents from you, which is great, and it's worth, as you said, like 1,000 times more than simply serving up an ad. Fantastic. But you got to start somewhere.
Yeah,
so,
I love it.
A couple of things. So basically, why can't Spotify do more, I guess, like accurate pricing? Is it because, like, will the blockchain help you administer? Okay, Tatiana had 10 views on her video with ads on them. Let's take out the 25 cents per view. Let's just say 10 people decided they want to do it. Are you a more efficient system of delivering to me my revenue than Spotify because of the blockchain or because of the design of your protocol, or no?
I think ultimately yes. Ultimately yes. Because here's the thing, and this is just my personal belief. Well, I guess we'll see what works out in the long term. From this point forward, the legacy system is the legacy system. That's not going to change. The rights management, all of the however many agencies that go in to manage all the rights for all the big labels, they're not going to change what they do because they're fine, right? Spotify, as much as it's hurting artists, the industry as a whole, like the big companies as a whole, they haven't had layoffs. They've already had their downsizing when Napster came along, right? So they're not going anywhere. But going forward, when you have people like you, when you're able to designate your rights publicly in the blockchain or however it is that you decide to do, to me that's a much more efficient system going forward. Because now we can say at the birth of a song, I wrote the song, this is the performer, this is the guitar player, and here's the mixer, here's everyone involved with it. Once that gets digitally, Right, and once it gets digitally tagged, if it goes into the music listening universe, whenever that money comes in, it can be evenly or efficiently distributed to whoever is involved in that smart contract. The systems as they are right now, they'll never adopt that because their money is in the lack of transparency. Right.
That's great, isn't it? You could imagine, you could even have a hash for that original song, so you know that someone hasn't duplicated it somehow, and be able to you'd be able to prove that, hey, this is the original time that it came out somehow. Someone
But that's a different thing than what Valerian is offering, because that's something where like a Scribe or Monograph or Revelator, one of those types of companies, with the music example, I would put my music on one of those blockchains. So those are slightly separate. You wouldn't necessarily be having registered works, but you're kind of using that as a side example, right? Just to be clear?
Yeah, and all of those systems that you talked about, they're going to basically offer that to everyone. So once they sort of get that figured out, there's no reason YouTube can't plug into that system of rights management. There's no reason that we wouldn't be able to, assuming that they continue on the path that they're going on. So there's a whole bunch of different stuff that's happening that once those things get developed, we can plug into and then add that on top of the service that we're already offering.
Yeah, I love what you're doing there, Valerian, because you're just kind of sitting there on the sidelines offering one piece of the puzzle, and then as the other pieces, like rights management, are developed, I mean, there's a lot of infrastructure building to go there. It does offer the potential that in the future, companies like Spotify are literally just a series of smart contracts that ought to distribute rights to individual band members or whatever their agreements between themselves are. And, all of that money is just distributed out trustlessly.
Let the robots do it, right?
Yeah, let the machines do it. It's great. I'm all for disruption in content. Coming from a publishing background, I worked at magazines at a time where everything was going into the cloud and people were freaking out, and there was a lot of people saying it'll never happen. The cloud is a myth, and hello today, right? And it's just completely decimated traditional publishing revenue models, turned them upside down, and they've been continually evolving. Now with the advent of Bitcoin, just the fact that we can do microtransactions, it again changes everything completely. So we're going to see another evolution of the model of content.
I agree.
Monetizing content again.
There was this, the time when, back to the print side of it, where print on demand came out, and really you had authors and bloggers talking, or even artists being able to, for the first time, being able to communicate directly with their audience through blogging and through the internet, and then you had the ability to get rid of the publishers who basically you were using for the little black book that they had of people who could distribute the book, plus putting up the money to print 1 million copies and then send it to all the stores in their little black book. All of a sudden, you could be in touch with all your fans, print on demand, so you wouldn't need all that money up front. But the thing that was missing was being able to get paid without a bank in the way, or without like tiny amounts. When I say tiny, like $1, 30 cents. And so it's a really, really great time to watch this evolve, and I'm glad to be living in this era of evolution of content creators and artists.
That's what we're doing next week in Hollywood here, where we have an event called Bitcoin and the Blockchain for the Entertainment Industry, and that's the exact thing that we're going to be talking about. Which is, okay, let's look at Hollywood, and we're talking film, television, music, and sort of re-look at that, but with the mind of having knowledge of Bitcoin and the blockchain. And you talk about simple things like, how much does a movie make in a weekend? And you have all of these very expensive, algorithms and companies, they forecast, and it's a whole parlor sport to see the opening weekend. What did you actually do, right? How about this? How about you just actually count the money? right? If you have every ticket, it's
Absolutely.
got. That's all you do. So that's an industry within the industry, and that one little element of Bitcoin, that's just gone, right? So you just take that and just look at it throughout the production to distribution pipeline, which is like, okay, why do you need a television network, right? When I watch something like Game of Thrones or Mr. Robot or something like that, do I really need all the other stuff that comes with it, or I just want the show that I want to watch, right? So what happens when the content creators who are making things like that actually just offer that to people, right? And you do that right now, but you still need Netflix, you still need Hulu, you still need a cable package, you need all of these things. But if someone can just give me the money directly, which you can do with the peer-to-peer payment system, why do you need all of these other things? Right, so there's a multi-billion, if not approaching trillion-dollar industry that's just with these little implementations are just completely turned on their head.
Sort of like chipping away at this redundant system, right? Slowly, one innovation at a time, just for sheer efficiency gains. Bitcoin and blockchain tech and solutions are just slowly eroding cartels and business models that really don't want to give up and let go.
Yeah, I mean, I used to work in television as well for 15 years, a long time, and so I always wanted, I didn't like pirating stuff, but if I really wanted to watch something, I was forced to do that back there, or let's say, there'd be something on YouTube and like an old Bob Dylan song would be up there, and this is what I have a problem with these centralized systems: is be this beautiful old song, Bob Dylan track, and there'd be all this beautiful, amazing conversation about that track and about what the memories that it brought back for people and what they were doing at the time when they first heard this, and young people were coming in going, oh wow, I've never heard any of this, who is this guy? And all of a sudden, boom, it was gone. It was gone.
Yeah.
It was just disappeared, and they wiped out everything because it was copyright infringement. Now, I know that a lot of those people would have actually paid a little bit to listen to it, like if it was microsense, but there was no option. There was no option at the time, and they just basically destroyed a little bit of history actually, and people's memories and people's IP by what they were typing, because of the lack of options for people to consume. And that was the same for a lot of people pirating stuff. I mean, nowadays there's Netflix, there's Spotify, and all these options.
Popcorn time for movies.
Or popcorn, yeah. And I know that there's people that actually do want to pay. I mean, I do. I want the artists to earn something for their living so I can keep consuming it, because I know that there's a knock-on effect. I know that if everyone just keeps pirating, at the end of the day, we're not going to get any, much good content. We're going to get a lot. The quality is going to go down. The quantity is going to go up because people just love creating. But at the end of the day, if you can't live off it, you have to have a side job. So the time you have to create something is going to be cut down a lot. So I think what
bring on immutable ledgers.
Yeah, bring on immutable ledgers and have the ability and give people the option to pay a little bit for the content. I remember there was the experiment. I think who was it that did it? Was it Muse? I can't remember the band.
Might have been Muse or Radiohead. I think what you may be talking about.
Yeah, Radiohead. And they gave it the option, hey, pay what you want to pay. And I know that this is a bit of a skewed example because they already had a huge fan base. But what it showed is that they got a massive amount of money, and I think I heard somewhere that they actually got way more than they were expecting, because some people, they actually give a lot more than and then some people give a lot less. But another example of that is we used to do film screenings in Sydney of documentaries that we thought were important, of Monsanto, exposing Monsanto or something like that. and we at during the break in the middle where we let people talk and chat and meet and greet, we allowed them to donate something for a beer because we weren't allowed to sell because of regulatory issues, and people were donating way more than if we were to sell the beer. So for one beer, people would give you $5, $8, $10, and or sometimes 20 for the one beer because they wanted to support the whole project. So I think sometimes donation
it's kind of
is
funny
really
that.
nice to do.
Yeah, well, it's really funny that and I'll wrap this up really quickly, which is with all of this brand new spanking technology, a lot of times what happens is we take the new technology and then recreate the old thing that we have, but with the new technology, right?
Yeah.
So talk about the patronage system back in the Renaissance, right? Which is where you have a very small percent at the top, basically effectively funding the artist's creation that's then consumed by this vast majority at the bottom. And basically that's what happens when you open a pay what you want model, right? It's people don't just pay this amount the whole way through. A lot of people pay a heck of a lot at the top, and then a lot of people pay zero, and then ultimately somehow it balances out to continue things going forward. So to me, that's the exciting thing, which is we're going to take new stuff, we're going to try the stuff that worked and bring that back into the modern age, and it's just going to be a hodgepodge of completely different efforts. But as long as you continue to give people the choice,
yes.
Ultimately I think that's what works over the long term. Don't try to cram what you think people want, and just find a way to give people what they want with choice. Exactly.
Here. You're on mute.
Yeah, I know. Sorry, it's getting really dark over here. We've gone a little bit over time, but I wanted to give everybody the magic word. What do you guys think the magic word should be? Any suggestions?
Love.
Love. Okay, yes. Let's have the magic word be love today. Really quick, I wanted to say thank you to my guest, Valerian. It was really great talking to you. If y'all want to find out more about Pop Chest, their Twitter is pop_chest. And we're doing a talk in Los Angeles on December 1st at 7 p.m. in Hollywood. You can find out more about that on my website, tatianamrose.com. Theprotocol.tv, I think, is the URL for Valerian's site, and you can also find it on Eventbrite. Valerian, any other ways to contact you that I overlooked?
No, those are the perfect ones. My name is VALERIAN at popchest.com.
Okay, awesome. Fran, everybody knows that he is doing the Brave New Coin crowd sale at Brave Bank to the Future right now. You can also go to bravenewcoin.com. They've got a lot of really good news out there and obviously analysis. Fran, do you have any final parting words for our audience?
Yeah, if anybody wants to reach out, it's just Fran at bravenewcoin.com or Twitter as Thickamist. Look out for some news in the next few days. We've just announced a way to bridge market data with blockchain data, hopefully disrupt a lot of trade and verification solutions out there.
Wow.
Awesome. All right, Josh, any final parting words to our esteemed viewers?
Make love, not war.
And get your gold at Vaultoro.
And yeah, you can reach
you
out
should be plugging yourself. That's the point of this right now.
Look, yeah, Vaultoro, vault like a bank vault, and oro like gold in Spaniard.
Excellent. Okay, guys. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you for Liberty.me for hosting. Tatiana from TatianaMrose.com. If you guys need anything related to advertising and Bitcoin marketing and PR, please go to CryptoMediaHub.com. Many happy customers. And otherwise, we'll see you guys next week. The show is now on Tuesdays at noon Eastern Time if you want to tune in. I'll also be in the Latin American Bitcoin Conference December 4th through 5th in Mexico City. I'm really excited about that, and hope to see you all soon. Thanks very much for tuning in. Bye-bye.